our last Baird for 2010. God knows where the time has gone. And welcome back Mike Walsh on the hot couch. He's been travelling all over the place. And a few thank yous for helping this Baird happen over the year. And that's to mass media, to Traction, to Markle, to AOE, and very much Nothing But Shorts. Thank you for filming this evening. And on the couch tonight, Mike and I are delighted to have as our very special guest, and that's Justin Baird, innovationist at Google. Thank you. Please welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Oh, we got two mics.
No,
okay.
That's right.
Two mics.
Well, welcome, Justin. It's great to have you here.
Thanks. Thank you very much for having me.
Innovationist. That must be an interesting conversation starter when you hand over your business card. I mean, do people just stare at the title and go, what's that?
Yeah, the first thing they say is that really a word in the English language?
Is that actually really the first thing they say?
No, but that's sort of wonder. But it is kind of like we are sort of thinking about like, well, what's the kind of structure to really talk about what's happening kind of cross-functionally, like across the Australian business, and really looking at what's happening with technology. And working with people about bringing the genius out of Google, like sort of all these things happening in there, but trying to get that into the way people are using technology.
So you're their attempt to sort of personify the genius into a human body.
Well, not necessarily that, but more be the gateway.
Right.
So let's sort of say, oh, hey, you want to do something with maps, mobile, and underwater basket weaving. Well, we've got the guy that's got the PhD in underwater basket weaving. Let's get you in touch with him and make something happen.
So you're more like an account manager for the for the crazy guys.
I guess
Google.
so. Yeah.
How did they advertise for that? I mean, because I remember in the old days, like the NSA used to, put like codes in crossword puzzles to find, genius code breakers. Did they do something really innovative to catch you?
So I actually came into the company in a different role, but because of, I guess, I've got a background in engineering, but also in music. So I went to school for electrical engineering, but at the same time was in the music program. So sort of doing the kind of left brain, right brain thing. And so I sort of came in a different role, but then this kind of morphed over the past couple of years into what it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what's really exciting you at the moment? I mean, what's on your plate?
Well, lots of interesting things. Actually, certainly the mobile space is something that I'm really keen and working a lot in. But I guess it's kind of, when it comes to mobile, I'm also sort of thinking about, using these technologies in a different way. Thinking about how we can actually drive different types of value, looking at mobile more like an engagement platform than something that you are just, using not only for phone calls and stuff like this, but really integrating and being a part of your personal experience.
Well, the mobile's an interesting one now, isn't it? Because I mean, in a way, the devices we've got are designed to do anything other than make phone calls, and of course, kids don't even think about mobile phones. They don't know any phone that isn't mobile. So I mean, what you're playing in now is really kind of a new form of, I guess, mobile computing more than anything else.
Sure, definitely. And actually, that's very true. Like I've got my oldest son is 7, and I've been thinking he's never actually heard an analog modem, like dial-up. Like the only place he'll ever hear that is on Wikitude or Wikipedia or something. Like the ching bong. He'll be like, "What's that, Daddy?" It's like so different in what's happened in just a few years. Yeah. So certainly mobile internet devices and how that's kind of changing things, and certainly with what's happening with the new tablets and different things.
You must get sick of people just sort of saying, "Is it going to be Apple iTunes Store versus Google?" I mean, people love dialectics, But I mean, the thing that really impresses me about what's happening with Android is actually not what's going on in the West, but in the emerging markets. Because I saw now there's like these $100 Android phones available from Shenzhen. So everyone in these BRIC countries are actually going Google.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's, I guess, one of the interesting things about having this kind of open source platform and the idea of allowing people to use these things and modify it for their particular implementations. Certainly that's something that is really driving kind of innovation in this space. And I think that's really a great thing in terms of allowing people to sort of take these things and do what they want with them to make that possible,
But there's a dark side to that as well, because I mean, the great thing about Apple being run by a benevolent madman is that everything is controlled. And you guys have got like millions of different possible specs, and there's different device profiles, and it's very difficult to manage all the fragmentation.
Yes, well, it certainly is. I mean, I guess one of the things that's really interesting there is that there's innovation happening in all these different areas. So we're innovating by driving a lot of what's happening with this platform and the middleware and the things that are part of that system.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people are driving innovation with devices like this. I think it's great what Samsung has done with this tab. Right?
Speaking of which, you've actually got one, haven't you?
I do, but it's in a bag in the back of the room. Maybe we'll get it.
No,
Or
it's someone to bring it
anybody
over.
know which one's my bag back there?
Someone ransack through all the women's bags over there. Whatever they find interesting, we'll put it on the counter here and have a little show and tell.
But what I think is really interesting about that is this is the first time that the hardware device manufacturer is actually innovating in front of even the platform.
Right.
And so, those guys are like, well, hey, we want to drive this new experience. We want to be first to market and bring this thing out. And I think that's great because, we're now seeing kind of innovation driving in these different areas. Yeah.
And you guys have, is this your sort of backpack?
That would be it, yes.
It's like it's got explosives in it. What kind of bag is that?
Thanks. Sorry, it's very heavy. Yeah.
Oh, they must love you at airport security.
Oh, I see someone's already taken my wallet. That's good.
That's probably not Australians.
Anyhow, let's find it. It's in here somewhere. There it is.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay, that's pretty cool. So talk us through what we're looking at here.
So this is a Galaxy Tab. So this is the Samsung device, which is sort of a kind of big looking,
It looks like a super Kindle.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It's sort of the same proportions as the little Kindle.
Yeah, and so this device actually.
Is this on the market yet?
It's actually, I think, it's going to be on the market very soon. So this is one of the sort of first devices that are kind of around.
Wow,
so
it's got haptics. So you can actually feel this. You can actually feel
yes,
the force on the screen.
Yeah. So I think this is very interesting in terms of how people are going to start using these devices. This is the first kind of Android kind of tablet device, but I guess the thing is, there's all the kind of discussion and things that are happening about, the tablet experience on Android and these type of things. I mean, this is running the release software that's out now.
And how's the experience on this different to the experience on an iPad?
So I mean, it's a tablet which is, I guess, this kind of different form factor as well. It's got sorry, this isn't supposed to be a pitch for Samsung or anything, but it's got a 5 megapixel kind of camera. I'm probably misquoting that, and then also it's able to take phone calls and all that kind of stuff. So it's really like a fully integrated device.
Forward-facing camera as well.
Yes, so it can do that kind of thing. So we're sort of seeing this happening in kind of the next technology generation, and what I'm sort of waiting for, this is a pretty cool device, but the one I'm waiting for is the one that's got a Bluetooth headset stuck in the back. So in the thing. When you're having a call, you can just pull out the Bluetooth headset and answer the call, and then stick it back in, and then it charges itself too, right? So you don't have wall warts and all this other junk and cabling and everything. So when that comes out, that'll be the device I think I'll to have
so
it to hold.
What do you call it? Wall warts.
Oh yeah, a wall wart.
Is that a Google internal?
No, that must be a U.S. American expression. Those horrible little things you got to plug in that don't fit next to each other. Yeah, those AC adapters where the transformer's on the cable instead of in the device. Yeah, so getting rid of those.
I like that. One of the criticisms of Google was that there was no device profile for tablets, and that there was almost this idea that tablets would go on a different evolutionary path to Google's Android platform. Is there been a change of heart there?
So you're sort of referring to this, a few different operating systems we're developing at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the interesting things about the kind of Google culture. I mean, you could sort of say the same thing about, Lars's Wave project and Gmail and Docs and spreadsheets and stuff. These things are sort of in conflict with one another. But really, the thing is, Google's philosophy is, if it's a good idea, let's go for it. Let's try to make something happen with it.
They warned you about the curse of the Fed talks, didn't they?
Yeah, so
anyone
I guess
from Google who
duly departed.
Gets their project killed at Google.
Right.
Poor Lars, he should never have agreed to speak here.
Well, I don't know which one will get killed, but I'm sort of across many of them, so maybe I'll be lucky and sort of come out in the end. I don't know.
So, Android's great. You mentioned before that Google's working across many areas, and some of the other things that you're involved in as well are around YouTube. And when we were chatting before, you mentioned this project that they're running now in the States with Bon Jovi. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So actually, just in the YouTube thing, I think one of the big things that we're seeing, which is sort of changing the face of YouTube and the user experience with that, is all the kind of live streaming capability.
Yeah.
So we live streamed all the IPL stuff. So you could watch all the IPL things sort of live on YouTube from around the world, which is actually really phenomenal and also fun that kind of innovation and that kind of technology.
Sorry, I've got no idea what IPL is.
Indian Premier League cricket.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. IPL, yeah.
I think actually, all of you know what IPL was?
I'm the American here.
I did fencing at school. And chess.
I'm the American, and I'm the one that knows what IPL is. Okay, fine. Okay, so what was interesting about that was that was innovation, and that technology and everything was coming outside of the U.S. because usually everything with this, to focus on the U.S. or the U.K. or something, and then it kind of trickles through to the APAC region. So I think it was really great to sort of see that kind of thing happening here. So with Bon Jovi, what they're doing is a live concert. We did something like that with U2 a little while ago. But what's interesting with this one is there's this little product. It's this little simple thing called Google Moderator. And what Moderator is it's actually just this thing where people can ask questions and then the community can rate the questions, sort of voting.
Right.
And it's actually come out of for like our internal meetings. It's like you have thousands of people wanting to ask questions. So people post their questions before the meeting, and then people can rate the questions. So then when it becomes the sort of Q&A session, you just say, okay, well, how much time do we have? And we're just going to go through the top questions that the community wants to hear.
So you have 5 people in a meeting, and they're pre-voting the discussion before they talk?
Oh, well, more like, the sort of Friday afternoon meetings where Larry and Sergey will get up in front of the whole company, and they'll be like, okay, so this is the cool stuff that happened this week, and then, what questions do people have? So, they'll do that kind of thing. So this moderator thing's now been turned into a proper product. And so this Bon Jovi concert, what they've done is they're using Moderator to actually allow people to create their wish list for the set. So what songs are they going to play? So everyone in the world can basically go on and say, oh, I want to hear "Living on a Prayer," and if "Living on a Prayer" gets the most votes, then that'll be the first song they play. But
the live audience is only small, isn't it?
Right. So there's only like 2,000 VIPs or something that are going to the event, and then everyone else is going to watch this live on YouTube.
That could be fun, you see. I mean, you could actually game this and get everyone to actually make sure that all the VIPs heard the worst possible playlist.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Try to get all of
these poor VIPs are sitting here. They're watching the same song being played like 50 times.
All the B-sides. Yeah.
There's a big push going on, with television. I know Google TV's had some mixed response in America. Not so much on the technical side, but really all the networks, banning the system. Do you see this really as the last gasp of the networks to control distribution, or do you think maybe Google mishandled their approach of the issue?
Right. Well, so I mean, being over here, I'm sort of a little bit remote from what's really happening with that project. But what I can sort of say about it is, our sort of approach to this is for it to be kind of like an open mechanism for anybody to be able to search for content, find content, all that. And I think. We are certainly. It was very interesting to see how the different providers were sort of starting to block and sort of change things.
Well, I know
around.
even at Google, they've taken the responsibility away from Google TV and handed it back to YouTube.
Sorry, in terms of
like actually the mechanisms of running Google TV sort of been folded back into YouTube now. So.
Oh, right. Well, so I think the thing is with that platform, though. I mean, it's like one of many IP TV solutions that are starting. I mean, we're already seeing it happening here.
Yeah.
And like to me, I think that it's more about this primary display suddenly becoming a part of this kind of lean forward engagement. This ability to sort of not just have the kind of lean back on the couch, but be able to interact and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where we're really focused in terms of driving this kind of innovation. The idea behind it is it's a Android-based TV. With the Chrome browser running, so you're able to search for all the content, online and offline
do you
in your
think,
own house.
I mean, the consumer behavior part of that's interesting. I mean, do you think we're going to change our relationship with televisions? I mean, do you think we are just going to lean forward like it's a big laptop screen on the wall?
Well, so what's interesting is I think that there are certainly trends towards that. I've got friends watching Lost in New York or something, and of course we get it here. Well, this was a season ago, so it was months later or whatever.
Don't pretend you're not downloading illegally. I know you're on camera, but I can't believe you're waiting for Channel 7 to stream.
Believe it or not, I do, because it's my wife that's got the remote control at home. I'm sort of half watching TV and on the computer at the same time. It's a bad thing. Anyhow, but what's interesting is I see all the status updates on Facebook from my friends, and they're sort of saying, "Oh, I can't believe John did that," or "What happened here?" So they're actually using, the laptops and the social networks that are not a part of this experience as kind of like, the mechanism to make it happen. So, I mean, how great would it be if that's kind of fully integrated and you'd be able to make all those kind of choices? Like for me, I think it's actually like, I can't wait for the day personally where the remote control has like a thumbs up and a thumbs down, So if somebody's serving me an ad, I could say, hey, I want to grab a bookmark of this, I'm looking for insurance or something. Or like if I'm sitting there watching The Good Wife on TV and I'm seeing all the L'Oreal mascara commercials, I could go thumbs down and pretty soon I'd be getting, content that would be more interesting to me.
That's not the way they're going to use it. It's going to end up being in reality television.
That's right. Yeah, but
that's
actually,
the end of all quality programming for all of us.
Right. There'll be a little webcam on top
just
of the
thumbs
thing.
up, thumbs down. Just people who just like kind of pushing the thumbs.
Yeah. But actually on that one, I think also the voting mechanisms, right? Imagine Oprah Winfrey having some chat and saying, well, let's find out not what the studio audience is saying. Let's find out what the audience thinks on this subject. And an instant later, she's got 150 million yeses and nos on some particular poll.
Yeah.
I think that's the kind of place where that kind of innovation is really going to drive this different way of interacting with media.
I saw some references to some of the far out stuff. I think there was a reference that one of your chief technologists made to kind of a Google Mind device that you would actually get an implant. Eventually, he saw in 2020 where you just think a thought and a search result would turn up in your head.
Wasn't that one of our April Fool's jokes?
No. Well, if it was, I mean, he's the fool because it was last week.
Oh,
it's a bit out of
week.
April.
Okay.
I think it was Hal Varian. I think it's one
right,
of
that's Hal's thing.
It's one of these guys you've got on payroll. Just a bit like you. Kind of just does cool stuff. But what is in the secret warehouse 13 at Google? I mean, what are some of the crazy stuff that you guys are working on? Like I know that Larry and Sergey have been experimenting with life extension labs and space elevators. I mean, how much of this stuff is getting funded quietly?
Oh gosh, I don't know what I can say to answer that
sure
question.
You can.
I can talk about what I've got in my warehouse 13. How about that?
Tell us some of your crazy.
So one of the things that I'm really actively involved with is this idea of using Google technology, or really technology in general, for good. So like Google for good, it's kind of my little catchphrase of G4G. Yeah.
As opposed to G4E, like the main operations.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things that I think of with this is the ability for communities to come together and beyond kind of the geographical boundaries. Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that I've done in the more recent past is with Earth Hour, as well as with the United Nations in Copenhagen. And of course, what happened in Copenhagen is a different story, a long story in itself. But one of the things that I think moving forward is this idea of using these mobile platforms, which are very personal and sort of local with all the right information, and being able to use that in ways to sort of communicate things well beyond kind of the traditional borders of the way that the world is structured. So, just as a concept, there's a really interesting project that's called Open Data Kit, which is available right now. And what you can do with it is you pretty much load this onto a device, and you can go out and take pictures of things, categorize things, and really become sort of part of the ability to report things about the Earth, report things about the environment around you. And so I think that it's like this kind of structure. I mean, for me, looking into the next couple of years, I sort of see this idea of communities really sort of taking hold of kind of the power behind a lot of these things, and having companies.
So how would you do that as a kind of to stop crime or ecological disasters, or even sort of a low level?
So I mean, fundamentally for me, I think it's about like the environment, right? So it's really kind of like an observation system.
Right.
So imagine the human superorganism, right? Which is, we're all a part of this kind of superorganism that's, either going to save the planet or destroy it. Whatever happens with that argument. But really, the idea of like being able to communicate those things. So imagine somebody sees some pollution issue, they could take a picture of it or a video, upload it, and then anyone around the world could see that.
Okay.
And I think those mechanisms are the things that we'll see certainly coming, because the technology is there to make it happen.
So this is sort of like citizen journalism being
sort of
folded into
science,
a more civic
environmentalism,
into a more civic association.
Yeah.
That's interesting. When I was in Sao Paulo in Brazil, they actually had a cobbled together system like that, where they had a system where people used to phone in complaints, like some street was broken or a telegraph pole. They actually matched it up with a map. And so what had happened was you could actually see in real time where the problems in the city, where the city was breaking down.
Right, right, yeah. And there's actually in the UK there's something called Fix My Street, and Fix My Street is literally that. They've got an iPhone app, and you can literally say, hey, there's a pothole, in the street here. But what's interesting about it is you can report these things, but you also see the statistics. So the municipality is sort of saying, okay, 30,000 things have been reported.
Yeah.
We fixed 1,000 of them, so we're working on 20,000 of them or whatever.
Right.
So then people actually get an idea of the
And
scale.
could you actually work out the most potholed suburb?
Yeah. So they had like all the maps and stuff
amazing,
like that. Yeah, very interesting.
So what else is in your warehouse there, Dave?
I think the other part of it is all about data and kind of data-driven insights. And I mean, certainly for people that are involved in kind of the advertising and marketing space, I mean, we're sort of seeing this kind of this renaissance of marketing this decade, right? I mean, I wouldn't say this year, but certainly this decade is when we're seeing kind of like the power shift, right? The power shift towards the users.
Yeah.
And the users being able to comment and be a part of what's happening from a social engagement and all that. And I think really that perspective of being able to drive insights from the data, because there's so much data. I mean, pretty much anything people have, buying an ebook, downloading things from.
We almost don't need to do focus groups anymore. I mean, you've got the whole
sort of
universe of users just there.
Yeah, I mean, like there are some savvy marketers out there that are putting 2 or 3 statements out kind of in text ads and stuff like this, and then just letting them all 3 of them run, and then finding out, okay, well, 80% of people clicked on this one, so let's use this one as kind of the one to move forward. So like it's almost like using online as the kind of focus group, the larger focus groups. Yeah.
So if you think about what the marketing department of the future would look like, would it actually just be a bunch of quants,
data analysts,
analysts, and data warehouse?
Well, I think it's an interesting question as well. But I think it's like that's part of the story. Yeah. But again, it's like a lot of people are coming out with social media monitoring tools and metrics and stuff like this. But at the end of the day, it's like you're still actually having a conversation with people online. So the best social media monitoring tools are still people.
Yeah.
You've got to have social brand advocates that are out there, supporting the brand and being a part of that.
But who should be doing this analysis? Like, you've got these specialist sort of analytics firms coming out now. You've got you guys doing a bunch of trying to make that data more intelligible. But should companies have that core competency internally now? Like, should they almost have a vice president of insights, who's got a kind of a pure mathematics degree?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it sort of depends on what your business is and what it's about. But I definitely think, be it somebody that you've got on staff, or whether it's somebody that's in a third party, like if you're using an agency to do that kind of specialist work.
Yeah.
But I think regardless of that, it's like I think there's kind of this next generation of what we might sort of call data and art coming together. And really this kind of concept of the next generation dashboards aren't going to be numbers. They're going to be like visualizations of millions of points of data, and if all the bubbles are blue, then it's a good day. If the bubbles are red, then there's some problems, and you can go dive into seeing what's happening.
Well, I think already a lot of CEOs are doing this. And one of my clients went to see the CEO of Best Buy, and he told me he saw that he'd had in front of him 3 big plasma screens. One was real-time searches on Google, another one was what they were saying on Twitter, another one was like blogs. And like he watched it like a stock price.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's now kind of proliferating, and I think certainly companies that are able to derive these kind of insights and be able to react to these things very quickly is going to really kind of drive the way that.
But
these things
work. But do you think there's a danger there? I mean, what we're seeing is just the froth of people's opinion. Like it actually doesn't reflect their deep-seated beliefs. I mean, a lot of marketing really drives to changing people's sort of identity behavior around brands, not just what they thought in the last 5 seconds.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think that's one of the pieces about this as well, is that it's very early days, and so there's not the same kind of let's say reporting mechanisms behind these things, and I think that's where things will sort of start changing as well. Like, I mean, we certainly know what is it like in the Twitter sphere. There's 80%. Don't quote me on the stats, but something like 80% of the comments come from 5% of the community or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's got to be ways to kind of monitor and engage that. And again, I think that's why it comes back to people being a part of this and being able to carry on those conversations.
I hope so, because it's certainly not as glamorous as the old Mad Men days.
Yeah, very different, this kind of future. Yeah.
Well, let's pause there and take some questions from the audience. If you don't mind, if you just tell me who you are, and I'll repeat your question for the cameras. And that's also ask a bad question, the whole universe will see. And then Justin will answer. So who would like to go first? I think this gentleman in the back.
Michael, I heard Dolby Lab.
Hey.
Question is, I know Google has that 20% time that people want to actually innovate. fraction of the innovation Google does actually comes from that as opposed to buying other companies?
So the question from Dolby Labs, actually, was Google has the 20% rule about time spent on doing new ideas. What percentage of innovation at Google actually comes from that 20% as opposed to stuff that just bought in?
Yeah, so I guess maybe the first thing to say is that like the 20% time is sort of a big part of the culture, and I think it's over 50% of our products have actually come from 20% time projects. So that's a kind of good indicator of where these things have come from. But I think also with the 20% time, we have this other thing that's kind of a part of that structure, which is this thing that we sort of call the ideas board. And it's sort of really another piece of it, which is anybody from around, good ideas come from everywhere. So people are able to just put any ideas up on this ideas board, and it's got like a rating system, which is like 5 stars is like we should already be doing it, and 1 star, which is we shouldn't be doing it.
And is this ideas board in every office?
So it's just in the cloud, yeah. So it's the same board that everyone can see, sort of like just in a web browser, yeah. Thousands and thousands of ideas, just literally on a daily basis, everyone just putting stuff up there. And then like it's got a search mechanism, of course, as well. So then let's say I'm an engineer working in mobile development, and I've got 20% time, I want to do something new, I can go and search for these ideas, find the ones that are actually really interesting to people and the community, and then drive that forward. So it's sort of a part of the whole culture of those things together.
And how do you credit people who've come up with these ideas? Do they get some special...
Well, usually those turn into real projects, yeah? So like, whoever's actually developed these ideas, depending upon where they come from, right? If it's someone in sales or marketing that comes up with this idea that needs an engineering team, they may be brought in as a consultant and be a part of it.
Right.
But if it's an engineer, then it'll probably become, if it becomes a real project, then they become one of the lead engineers, that kind of thing.
I know. I saw at Mountain View the Google master plan they had on the wall.
You mean that whole thing?
Yeah, with everything
yeah.
Google's going to do, and it had the Google Death Star in the bottom right corner. But how's that idea tracking on the Google Ideas board?
The Death Star one?
Yeah.
There's lots of people that like to play games. Lots of video games players over there. Yeah.
Let's take another question. Yes, sir.
James from News. I like what you're doing with voting, and I envision a day that we can govern a country through kind of connected online polling. Apart from the fact that we're not quite technologically advanced, do you see anything that could be a setback to us running mini referendums every day, or
Okay. The question, James from News, he's quite taken by this idea of voting, at Google, and hopefully less so by the up and down button on the TV remote. And he was wondering what's holding us back from building that into more political or government structures.
Right. There's already like a lot of this kind of e-voting, kind of online voting stuff. There's a whole kind of consortium that's working on that kind of stuff in North America and many other countries as well. A lot of that ends up being kind of like this verification of personal identity and how you actually can sort of verify that this vote is coming from an individual and that it doesn't come from the same individual twice, and all those kind of mechanisms. There's actually a really interesting company that's out of Canberra, I believe, called Green ID. And Green ID is actually driving some of the kind of technology behind this, which is this idea of, you'd be able to register different pieces of information, and then that way you could sort of do an online 100-point verification. And it's actually coming from the finance sector, and this idea of, hey, I could open a credit card account or whatever it is without having to go into a branch. So really moving towards this e-banking thing. I think it's those type of technologies that really need to mature before we'd be able to really do real voting online. But when it comes to an Oprah poll or something like this, I guess it's not as important if it's swayed. Maybe it's a 1% margin, there'd be an issue.
No, I think we should have 100-point verification for reality TV.
Yeah, for reality. Yeah, exactly.
I think it would make it much more interesting. Another question? Seriously, you got the innovationist from Google, and you want to ask him a question? Surely ask him how do you get his job. Yes, sir.
My question is really around, I guess, for you yourself personally, plus also within the company, how you deal with the overwhelm of ideas that there are, and how you begin to sift through and not become overwhelmed by the ideas, the opportunities that are there.
Simon's question was, how do you, at Google, not become overwhelmed by the sheer volume of ideas?
So I use we use the same thing, Gmail, but we've got our kind of internal version. So it's enterprise apps and stuff like this. So we do this dog fooding thing, right? So we all, anything that's going to get launched, it's sort of we test it as guinea pig to begin with. But so we pretty much have the same things as Gmail inside. And so what I do is I actually subscribe to like hundreds of aliases. And there's actually a really neat feature in Gmail which you can turn off the unread messages. Because like my unread messages is like in the 70,000s or something. Because what I do is I'm actually just creating my own custom search index. So then when I want to find out, okay, what's happened with YouTube or what's launched here, what's launched there, then I can just use my email search as my own kind of custom index into what's happening in the company. So that's one of the ways I've been able to kind of manage the information overload. But it is interesting because like at Google, there's like literally on about 60 to 90 product launches every week. So literally 60 to 90 product launches a week. Some of those things might be like incremental bug fixes or whatever, but then other things will be like launching a new portal in a new country and stuff. So there's both these kind of incremental things as well as the transformational things that are happening. So it's really you do try to keep abreast of all the things that are happening, because a lot of times the things that happen in other markets first are the things people are asking you about here. Yeah.
And so do you almost have like kind of a new employee boot camp where they teach you how to manage the chaos that is Google?
So yeah, actually in different areas, like as an engineer, like a brand new kind of intern or a first-year engineer, they have things like the life of a search, and like literally they spend like a week understanding all of the things that kind of happen to like make those how the keyword queries work and how it all goes into the back end and how it actually does that result in milliseconds. Yeah.
Oh, cool. We have another question here, I think. Yes.
Hello, Cara.
Hi, Cara.
I was just wondering if you'd comment a little bit more about where you see mobile going. You mentioned your full tablet and what sounds like from a device point of view a bit of an integration of mobile and tablet and so on. Where do you see that going?
Cara's question was where do you really see mobile going beyond these sort of Android devices and tablet devices?
Weren't we just talking about that before with the thing you get implanted under your skin?
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Yeah, no.
So I guess
Google birth control.
or natural selection or something, right? I guess the thing is, I think what we're seeing really with these tablets is this the integration of what was happening kind of in the PC web and the mobile space and these things coming together. For me, I think, sort of starting in, really, it was sort of 2008, 2009, we saw a lot of very interesting things happening where innovation was coming from the mobile platform instead of the PC. Before that, it was pretty much people did cool stuff on the PC web and then tried to, get that onto the mobile and get a similar experience. So I think that whole thing is really making a transformation. Now, in terms of where I see it going in the future, it's sort of difficult to say because there's so many things that are happening that I sort of see further integration and like being, I guess, one of the things that I see with Google's infrastructure when it comes to all the cloud computing stuff and all the things that are kind of this large scale infrastructure, it's actually making it easier to have more personal and more localized information. So I think really those both of those trends, the localization aspect as well as the personalization.
Well, the cloud thing with mobile is going to be interesting. I know in Africa, like a lot of people own a SIM card, but there'll be only like one phone in the village.
Right, one for
the entrepreneur is renting it out to everyone.
Yeah.
And I know they're doing some experiments with the cloud-based identity in Africa, where eventually you're going to pick up a phone, the cloud will have all your contacts, and effectively you won't need a SIM card. It'll be biometrics, and the cloud will just drop your phone. So I could pick up your phone, and it'll actually be my phone.
And it'll know it's yours. Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's one of the things. Of course, there's this discussion about is the cloud versus apps versus cloud, and we sort of see these things going back and forth. And certainly, with the development of HTML5 and the way that those things are going, it's still relatively immature, but it's getting to the point of really being useful.
Yeah.
And I think we're pushing that forward. Is it going
to be a cloud world versus an apps downloaded world?
I think there's sort of a place for both.
Yeah.
There's sort of a place for both, really. Certainly one of our big bets as a company, starting even 10, 11 years ago, was cloud computing.
Yeah.
And that's really a core to all of our infrastructure. But, there's always going to be the time where you need to have something offline, or you're going to be on a plane and you want to read something. It's all those kind of things where you're still going to need the kind of local mechanisms.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to get away from needing kind of local content or cached content on a device.
Yeah.
But I think exactly what you're saying, with my Android phone, when I swapped phones recently, all of my stuff was in the cloud, so I didn't have to sync the phone at all. But so there's those different types of integrations.
I think that's interesting.
But maybe just one of the last points with that, I think, is really this kind of concept of a device like this really being almost your wallet. I think that's kind of where things are going in terms of transaction. Like I saw this guy like literally a couple days ago, you know those Oyster cards that are in the UK, the London, and he literally scraped away all the traces and the little chip and just pasted them back onto the back of his mobile phone because he didn't want to carry the card around. So literally, he just had his phone, and he could just walk through, and
But the
use it that
Japanese
way.
already have that. Like they've got those Felicia chips, and
They do, yeah.
I mean,
but it's interesting because we don't see that happening here. Whereas, Japan being one of the most, developed markets, of course, the most developed market for speeds and things. But then you see these payment systems being much more popular in like India, where it really is. I mean, you don't have the PC web, and credit cards are an issue, and getting to a bank is an issue.
Someone
so it's all
told me it
happening
was
over
extraordinary
SMS.
that now 25% of Kenya's GDP runs through M-Pesa, their mobile banking solution. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, GDP is not that big to start with, but just because they didn't have the infrastructure, so they had no other choice.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, I think it's that same type of thing about user behavior, how people are actually integrating and how they use these devices. Like, you see people using those payment systems, but like here, we're still holding on to pieces of plastic in our wallet, So I think it's just interesting to see how those things will move forward as well, where it's not only the kind of integration of maybe my online stuff, but all the ways that I sort of interact with the world around me sort of coming from some mechanism that I'm holding.
The black Amex Android phone. I can see it now. Do I have one last question?
The corporate phone versus the...
yes, this one. This lady.
Just wanted to know what your thoughts are on the innovation in the space of e-commerce and e-commerce.
Zoe's question was, what are your thoughts on innovation in e-commerce and m-commerce?
Well, actually, one of those things I was talking about before, this green ID, this kind of idea of being able to be, I could apply for a mortgage almost and never walk into like a physical location. I guess that's one part of it. But one of the things I think is certainly the micropayments area. To me, I think this idea of like us trying to share a bill for some, bar tab or something, it's like, why aren't we doing that over, a simple device? Or why can't I send money in an email? Just sort of say, hey, I owe you $10 from, last night. Let's, here's the email with that payment. So I think those type of things are very interesting. But I'd also sort of say, I think kind of like in the kind of e-commerce space, it's almost like, it seems like it's taken longer than it should have to sort of be like, like people walking around with a mobile phone. It was like 20 years ago, it was a novelty to see somebody walking around with a battery pack in one hand and a phone in the other, and it was. But now it's just a part of our lives, like everyone that needs one or wants one has it. It's almost like you'd expect that same type of thing to happen with e-commerce. But I also say the same thing about social, right? Social networking technologies. We see the kind of larger things like Facebook and Orkut and High Five and these, but like it's going to be one of those technologies that a few years from now, if you need to have social networking as part of your site, like you see this with Facebook Connect and stuff like that, then that's going to kind of be a part of the integrated core technologies that people use. So it'd be nice to sort of see
like
that happen
RSS.
with e-commerce as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got time for one more question, I think. So,
Hi, Krishna from Different. There was some time ago an interesting debate sparked by the resignation of design lead at Google about the innovation culture at Google, about it being resolving innovation from a very data-driven matrix rather than from an intuition or see outside the scope of available options to move innovation forward.
Interesting question from Christian, who said, there's been some controversy at Google previously about the nature of innovation, and whether it should be something driven from data or driven from intuition. Can you comment?
Yeah. So maybe just to clarify, are you sort of referring to the kind of UX side of things in terms of the design side? Is that the thing you're referring to? Yeah. Well, I think you're sort of making that question a little bit more broad as well. Yeah.
I'm interested in both. Christian's interested in this.
Okay,
broadly,
maybe I'll answer it a little bit more broadly than exactly UX stuff. But what I sort of see with that is like, let's see, how's the sort of way to sort of say this? I think that you know, when we say good ideas come from everywhere, and we've got this kind of this incubator of 20% time, but one of the things that's also sort of a part of that is like what we saw with Wave, where it was literally almost like a startup inside the company.
Yeah.
And you know, there's been many kind of instances of these type of things as well. So I think that there's these kind of things where when everyone agrees it's a good idea, then maybe some of these rules get broken and we sort of create something different inside. Because I mean, it is a relatively large company now, yeah. So to be able to drive that kind of innovation, like, you know, one of the philosophies is, you know, you shouldn't be more than 10 paces away from a decision. You know, and when you're on a team of, you know, engineers, however many engineers working on Google Maps, like, you know, there's people in almost every continent except Antarctica working on Google Maps, you know. Yeah. So like, how do you actually do that? So you can't really have a decision with, you know, one room of people. So really, we sort of drive, you know, when it's a good enough idea or something new and interesting, then we'll sort of break that mold. But you know, certainly in a large company, there's got to be some rules and regulations, yeah.
So I guess drawing that in onto the design piece, I mean, do you think Google tends to favour even aesthetic solutions that go towards big data, you know, versus maybe Apple, which tends to favour things that are just beautiful?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's certainly part of it. I mean, I guess the UX piece of it, but there's a piece behind that which is really the metrics. And so there's this difference between, like, we use this thing in the company that's called the HEART metric system, and really that's how all of these kind of decisions are made. And really what that is it's a second order metrics. So really, like, you know, usually metrics are like page views, you know, 7-day actives, all these kind of things. But those are like literally the things that just a computer spits out at you.
Yeah.
And so like, okay, I had 100,000 clicks of this button. How do I know that those people were actually clicking that button and had the right purpose in mind? You actually need to know what they were doing beforehand and then actually see if they complete the task. And so it's this kind of second order level of like really defining. So it's more about happiness, engagement, task completion. Yeah?
Right.
And literally that's the way that we sort of define these things. And we'll do that through there's surveys, there's kind of feedback. There's also, like when we say 7-day actives for Gmail, it's like we don't actually count that as like, you know, what a person logging in once in 7 days, which is what the definition of 7-day active is. It's more like we've actually called this thing 5 out of 7. So our metric on Gmail is you're only an active user if you've actually logged in 5 out of 7 days. So we actually define these different types of metrics because the data does kind of drive various insights, and using those type of systems do provide kind of a different level of success than just kind of looking at, you know.
So you've managed to turn happiness into a statistic and beauty into a set of analytics.
Yeah, well, so I mean, here's an example, right? So like, for example, Google Maps used to have 2 fields. If you remember a couple of years ago, it was like what and where. So pizza in San Francisco, right? And then we made this change, which was, well, people would just want to do natural text, you know, so just let them type in natural text in the box. But we were concerned, of course, because that's a pretty big paradigm shift for everyone out there. And so, you know, you usually end up having the beginning of it is there's horribly negative reactions, but those negative reactions occur for like, you know, a microsecond in terms of the longevity of the product. And then you actually sort of see, well, does usage increase? Are people happier, in effect, using this mechanism? That we provide feedbacks and surveys and all that. So I mean, by actually aggregating this information, you can infer those things.
So let me ask you one last question, then, which is probably the first question I should have asked you.
Sure.
What do you define innovation as?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing for me is innovation is really about change, but I guess the thing is it's more than just about change in terms of, you know, how do we actually progress this kind of, I guess, this wave of technology and the way things are moving forward? You know, we certainly don't want to be sort of taking steps backwards in terms of any of the things we've talked about tonight, you know, in terms of user experience or the way that people are using these type of things. And I mean, for us, the kind of mission statement is really about making things more accessible and more useful, right, in terms of information.
Yeah.
So for us, in terms of really kind of clearly defining innovation within the company, it's about making things more accessible and more useful. And we're trying to drive that forward with all the different technology advances we're making. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please thank Justin?
Thanks. Thank you.